The 2022 season has been a season to be remembered for its dramas rather than competition. The strict changes that came with the rule changes were actually expected to produce such an outcome. While the differences between the teams increase after each rule change, a couple of teams managed to make a difference. Red Bull Vettel domination after 2009 and Mercedes Hamilton domination that came with the turbo hybrid era after 2014 are the clearest examples of this issue in the recent past. But as the years pass, the cars begin to converge again as the teams grasp the rules. The 2021 season is also an ideal example at this point. We've seen Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Alpine, Aston Martin, and AlphaTauri fighting for the podium. The podium from 7 different teams in one season is a really good scenario. In the 2022 season, Lando Norris is the only person who managed to reach the podium outside of Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Another good example for us to understand how sterile the struggle has become compared to last year. There is a phrase often used in foreign sources, silly season. Such an ascription became inevitable when the on-track struggles were replaced by dramas, technical and tactical problems, as well as magazine events. Let's take a look at the winners and losers of the 2022 season together. Do not forget to leave your thoughts as a comment below. The biggest winners of the 2022 season are undoubtedly Red Bull and Verstappen. Red Bull had 17 wins throughout the season, 15 of which came from Verstappen. For Verstappen, we can say that it was the most perfect season of his career. He seldom made mistakes and managed to make up for those moments where he made mistakes. The best example of this is that after the spin in Hungary, he continued to compete and got the win. It is also an unforgettable point that Verstappen, who started from 15th place in Belgium, came from behind and won the race. At this point, we need to open parentheses about a separate name for the vehicle, Adrian Newey. The Red Bull RB18 Wolf was one of the designer's most dominant designs. Red Bull's hand was relieved at the point of development that the car had not experienced the ripple problem at any time of the season. Especially after the midpoint of the season, we started to see that many teams started to be inspired by Red Bull in terms of design. Although the right budget overrun debate and Sergio Perez-Verstappen tensions came to the fore at the end of the season, Red Bull was definitely the clear winner of the season. The owner of the team passed away on the way to the championship. The championship was dedicated to him. Red Bull will start next year a few steps behind. Let's see what is going to happen. Now let's continue with a team that both wins and loses. Scuderia Ferrari. With the team sacrificing the last 2 seasons, it was predicted to start the 2022 season with a good breakthrough. But no one predicted that the best car would be Ferrari at the start of the 2022 season. Ferrari started the season with a double. Until the end of the Australian race, there was definitely a Ferrari to top the winners list. But then everything started to come in order. The vehicle's durability problems began to emerge. The team could not make quick decisions. Countless strategy mistakes were made. People shared the Ferrari pit wall with the circus concept almost every weekend. The pilots were involved in unlucky accidents. They also made so many individual mistakes. When Arrows returned to team principal Matteo Binotto, he did not manage the process well. After saying that there is no reason why we should not win all the remaining races during the summer break, the fact that Ferrari could not win even a single race sums it up. Ferrari managed to become the loser of the season, which started by winning as the weeks passed. After this sentence, it is necessary to mention Mercedes. Mercedes, on the other hand, managed to win the season, which started by losing as the weeks passed. Nobody expected that Mercedes, the dominant team of the turbo hybrid era, would fight Haas at the beginning of the 2022 season. The Mercedes engine was troublesome, there were problems in the design of the vehicle, it was just as uncomfortable. Lewis Hamilton has repeatedly complained of back pain. We also saw that Hamilton, whom we have known for many years with his flawless driving, was involved in accidents together with individual mistakes. Although the first half of the season started as a nightmare for Mercedes, the stable results in the second half managed to give hope for the future. Both pilots fought well. As a 7-time world champion, Hamilton may seem like one of the losers of the season inside out. A name who is used to fighting for the championship. But Russell, who started to compete in a big team for the first time, finished 4th in the championship and surpassed his teammate. On top of that, winning a race, a great achievement by its own standards. After Mercedes, Alpine is next. It is not acceptable for Alpine to be this far behind a factory team front trio. It is clear that the Enstone team has some Ferrari-like problems in terms of management and stability. The team was the 4th fastest car on the grid throughout the season. He managed to fight Mercedes on some tracks. Renault engine appeared strong at the start of the season. But later on, many authorities said Alpine had throttled after the first quarter of the season. Fernando Alonso's engine is dead text that appeared on the screen while he was fighting for pole position in Australia, and the accident that followed was a season summary for Alpine. After this race, endurance problems started to come one after another in Alpine. We started to see that the vehicle with its potential lags far behind. Although Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon are among the winners of the season with their individual performances, I think the Alpine Formula One team, one of the losers of the season despite the fourth place one. Alpine lost first its past and then its future. The departure of Alonso and Piastri will definitely affect the team. A similar situation applies to McLaren. Although McLaren is one of the first teams that comes to mind when it comes to Formula One, they have been far from the championship war for almost 15 years. The team entered this season with high hopes, but there were many problems to be solved. In addition to all this, Daniel Ricciardo's subpar performance throughout the season turned the 2022 season into a nightmare for McLaren. Although Lando Norris consistently tried to score points and carry the team, his effort alone was not enough. In this team, McLaren and Ricciardo were the losers. Lando Norris managed to be the best of the rest and became one of the winners. Next up is Aston Martin. Aston Martin started the 2022 season with great investments and great hopes. The 2022 season was a good time to see the impact of the engineers and countless human resources transferred by the team. But despite all that, Aston Martin started the season as the worst car by far. Sebastian Vettel has repeatedly said that the Aston Martin is an unstable, unpredictable car. Obviously, something had been done wrong. With the update following the first quarter of the season, the appearance of the vehicle has completely changed. Green Red Bull comparisons were made for this vehicle, which appears to be an exact copy of Red Bull. Although Aston Martin has taken a step forward with this update, it has not been a combative vehicle. Vettel's retirement decision, which came in the middle of the season, was an indication that there were some problems in this project. Even though Vettel performed on top of the car, Aston Martin is one of the losers of this season as a team. Alfa Romeo is the most neutral team of the season in my opinion. They started fast, but the Ferrari engine held back the sequel. In addition, Alfa Romeo was by far the team with the most downtime of the season. We were watching a Bottas fighting Mercedes and Alpine in the first races. The same Bottas almost failed to score in the second season of the season. That's why it's best to squeeze the Alfa Romeo somewhere in between. Haas and Magnussen shared a similar fate with Bottas. Magnussen managed to get good results when the car was fast at the beginning of the season, but then the Ferrari engine prevented it. Here it is necessary to open a separate parenthesis for Schumacher. When the car was fast, Schumacher was almost non-existent. The costly accidents he was involved in made him fall out of favor with Steiner. Although Schumacher performed better in the second half of the season, the car was not enough in those moments. When we look at what happened after all this, Schumacher both lost his seat and became one of the losers of the season. Haas, on the other hand, got rid of the last place. It did a good job in its own relatively standard. Next up is AlphaTauri. It wouldn't be wrong to launch AlphaTauri as Red Bull's B team. Everyone knows this fact now. It may come as a surprise to people that the side team of a champion team finds their place in the end. Obviously, both teams went in different directions, and the concept that worked was the Red Bull concept. It's very common for us to watch a faster AlphaTauri from next year. AlphaTauri, Gasly, Tsunoda, it would not be wrong for us to present the entire team as a loser this year. Williams returned to the last place with 2022. This must be the biggest record of a loss. The situation of Williams, the legendary team of the 90s, is truly deplorable. The change process the team has gone through in recent years doesn't seem to have worked well. Albon showed up at times and tried to do good, but he was ineffective in the second half of the season. Latifi is also your seat, and one of the season's losers. When we examine each team separately, interesting spirals emerge. Just because the teams are losing doesn't mean the pilots will lose as well. Or vice versa. If we leave the drivers and teams aside and talk about the organization, it's been a dim season this year after the peak last year. It causes Formula One to be among the losers as well.